As you might have heard, the Futurum Group produces the annual 6.5 Summit. This year, we've got a dedicated Security Boulevard hub during the summit where our audience can join the discussion live. Day 3 opens with Harman Kaur, who is the CTO of Tanium, talking about AI-native cybersecurity, plus deep dives with Broadcom, Cohesity, and Commvault. I'll be there in the hub to chat. Join us on August 25th through the 27th, and don't forget to sign up at 65media.com/summit. We hope to see you there. Welcome to Security Boulevard, the cybersecurity podcast from the Futurum Group. Each episode explores a variety of topics within cybersecurity and the technologies that drive it. You can find us on securityboulevard.com, the Security Boulevard YouTube channel, TechStrong TV, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Before we begin, let's meet the co-host for this episode. It is, of course, my good friend, Fernando Montenegro. Fernando, it's good to see that you survived the desert.
Yes, and it was 9 days in the desert, and it's one of my favorite weeks of the year. So I'm balancing two things. One of them is the wear and tear that comes from 9 days in the desert and all those fun things. And with the other, it was an amazing week from conversations and content and all sorts of things.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? Let's jump into the episode because, like you said, as you're listening to this, we're a couple weeks out, but as we're recording it, it is the week after Black Hat, DEF CON, and B-Sides Las Vegas. That I believe that is the largest concentration of security awesomeness that can be found on the planet. And we're kind of looking at what came out of it. As far as I know, there were no earth-shattering announcements. Nobody got arrested that I'm aware of. No company shut down any talks that were big public PR nightmares. It kind of felt chill and low-key, but from what we were talking about before we started the episode, it sounds like there was a lot of noise going on at the very least.
Yeah. The problem with attending like the security summer camp or hacker summer camp, as different people call it, different things, is that unfortunately agents are not here yet, and I can't clone myself and attend all of the things and be at all the talks and so on, right? So from what I've seen, it was pretty much what you said, in that no major earth-shattering events. But the thing for me that was really noticeable is how much. So, background. My main attendance, other than a couple of private events, was basically Black Hat and DEF CON. Right. I love B-Sides Las Vegas. It's an amazing conference. Unfortunately, it overlaps with some of the stuff that I had scheduled to do. So, right. But from what I've seen, it was really interesting how Black Hat is going through a transformation right now. I know that they are upgrading. They changed some of the team at Informa that's running this, and they've grown. Right. So one of the most noticeable things is, like, physically they've grown, in the sense that, for those of you who are familiar with the Mandalay Bay complex, other than, in addition to the main conference center area, right? And you know how often vendors will have private events at the restaurants in the area. Black Hat kind of made that official, in the sense that they created a cyber district, which was basically many, not all, but many of the restaurants in the area were closed off as vendor areas, right? They called it the cyber district, and it was interesting. Right?
For those of you who have never been to a conference in Vegas, I want you to understand just how big of a deal that is. There is no place to eat at the Mandalay Bay after hours, usually in the first 2 nights of a conference, because every vendor has some room booked. And some of those places, I think my favorite is Reraw. There are 3 different vendor parties going on in 3 different parts of that bar at the same time. Like they have even adopted the hallway in the back that head towards the bathrooms as a party spot. So for Black Hat to have formalized that whole thing this year and basically said, look, we know that this is going to get rented out, so we're just going to make it a thing that it's rented out, I think is actually kind of brilliant.
So just to be clear, like, and I love RERA. Yes, I was at RERA for at least one thing. It didn't extend that far, right?
Yeah.
So it was like citizens and
the everything right there by the convention center. So that would be if you're familiar with that, like Strip Steak, Citizens, the Wolfgang Puck restaurant, like close enough to the convention center that you can just kind of pop out and do your thing and then go back.
Yes, exactly, right. So Hazel Cafe and the Rift Lounge. I always forget what it's called, right? So those things near the center, right? And other than that, I mean, it's been I've had the privilege of going to Black Hat for many years. Someone mentioned, I mean, next year it's going to be Black Hat's 30th at edition. So the conference, I mean, they know what they're doing, and they've grown. The conversations at Black Hat were phenomenal, right? Both in terms of the scheduled conversations that I get to have as an analyst, right, as well as the ad hoc stuff that we see with just crossing the street. Like the funny story, like I was zooming down a hall late to a meeting and whatever, and someone else I know passed me by, and but it's like a half a second glance, right? And then I passed by him. I didn't say anything, and then I immediately texted him, "Did I just pass you by on at Black Hat?" And then he texts me back like almost right away. Yeah, we just passed each other. Okay, have a great conference. Boom. We ended up talking later, so that was good. But that was I think that summarizes what the week was like. From a content perspective, I'll give you one chance to say what was the main theme of the conference. Begins
Hold
with
on
the
a
letter.
second. Let me ask Claude, what was the main theme of Black Hat? I think we all know what it is.
And it was interesting because we had AI and agentic all over the place, right? It wasn't a good friend of mine, Andy Ellis. He actually walked the entire floor, right? And he put out a report that he does on what was the floor like. And yes, as you expect, agentic and AI all over the place. Not just to be clear, not 100% of booths, but some stupid high percentage, right? And the trouble is, and this is what I'm leaning into a bit. Uh, Very hard to distinguish messaging, right? In talking both with CISOs as well as with other analysts that I was hanging out with. Uh, Pity the poor CISO who has to sort out through this entire thing, right? Because it was extremely noisy, uh, both in physical terms. The talking in the conference hall is in the expo hall is it was loud. It was vibrant, right? But also from a messaging perspective, it was very noisy because everyone is doing all sorts of acceleration and triage and remediation and automation and right. So I think that from a messaging perspective, it becomes difficult for organizations to stand out, right? But anyway, so that's general comment, right? Um, the one of the things that Black Hat does really well is bring in a ton of startups. So there were quite a few. There were they started having a few years now, but they started having like a startup competition. Oh, sorry. One thing I should say before, for those who haven't who may not know, there is Black Hat itself is Wednesday, Thursday. Black Hat briefings is Wednesday, Thursday. They start with trainings all the way back on Saturday, right? So you can do training Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and that can be either like a 4-day training or two-day trainings or whatever. But one thing they also do is that they have on Tuesday they have summits, right? So separate summits, and I got to attend both the AI summit and the innovators and the investors summit, and so I split my time between them, and it was really interesting. So they've added a few other summits. There was one on the financial services. Uh, um, there's a CISO summit, which is very popular as well, and but so at the summit, the AI summit was really interesting. You had some content that was really uh, aimed at, I'm going to say, awareness in the context of it was the kind of like perhaps a little more introductory than what I would have liked. That's fine. But then you also had really interesting conversations where you had the representatives from some of the frontier labs as well as the large hyperscalers discussing what's needed for progress, right? So that's on the AI summit side, and then on the investors and innovators, uh, lots of conversations around, okay, in this noisy market, what is differentiation, right? How does a startup differentiate? How does a startup navigate the process of the life cycle, like from raising funds to growing to eventually exiting. Right? We can have a uh, it was and really interesting. And one of the things they did is that they hosted a startup competition. Right? So think Shark Tank like in front of select judges, and there were so I think that there were 130 companies at the beginning, and they get filtered so that 4 presented at the on stage, and out of the 4 that presented on stage, the one that won was Opnova, and one of the things that was really interesting is that uh, and this is a reference. Opnova does identity. I'm going to simplify it. I'm not doing any justice. It does identity management for uh, for applications using AI. Right? It's okay. But the thing that was really interesting is that theirs was the presentation that best covered the whole complexity of what enterprise IT is like, right? And I want to bring this back in the context that for a lot of startups, sometimes the challenge is, okay, you have this wonderful paved path about what does your offering do for a customer, right? And it was interesting to see how the startup that won showed uh, that reality sometimes is messier, right? They said, oh, yeah, we will use AI to automate some parts of your provisioning process for applications up to a point where, okay, we can't do it from now. We can't do it from here. This rest has to be manual, right? And I think that this is an important message for all of us as we are navigating AI. It's this notion of, okay, it can do some wonderful things to a point, but after that, we switch to something else. In the case of Opnova, they manually scrape screens or whatever. Like, doesn't matter. But this notion of, yes, let's use AI as an accelerator, but only to a point, right? Or only until we can be confident that it's doing what it's supposed to do. And too many pitches at Black Hat this week were very much, oh my God, AI can do all the things.
I think one of our delegates pointed out that someone has a GPU-enabled AI-enhanced tape backup system. And that was the point where he knew that maybe we have jumped the shark with this. Because the last I checked, tape does not need GPU acceleration. But I think maybe a better question to ask you, kind of related to some of this stuff when it comes to security, is do you feel like the AI Security Summit, that little breakout type thing, was better served educating the community about, where we are with this? Or are we quickly reaching a point where we should just assume a basic level of education about things related to AI and start from there, as, to be able to develop more advanced topics? Because honestly, from the things that I have seen and the people that I've talked to, at least outside of Black Hat, I think there are a lot of people who still don't quite understand what AI really does on the back end and how it does things either for them or in some cases to them. And so they're kind of, tilting at every windmill they can find that has AI security written all over it in the hopes that one of them will fix the problem that they have.
That's a really good question. I think that the answer is both. It depends. Porque no los dos, right? Because one of the things that I saw was I really think that people need to have a better understanding of how AI itself works, right? Uh, what are the capabilities of an LLM? What are what are the limitations of an LLM? Where do harnesses fit, and so on? And so that is very much necessary. And the AI summit and other conversations were helpful in that sense. Um, what I think we can somehow assume is that I think we can get past the conversation that, oh my goodness, AI is going to affect cybersecurity, as if that was new, right? We had a few of those, and that we could have done without. But then, but you know what? One of the things about this industry is that we have people coming in all the time who may not know the things that we know, or so knowledge is not evenly distributed, right? So let's make a concession and say that yes, uh, uh, the, the 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 level of knowledge keeps rising and so on, but we should have some sort of introductory content.
Yeah, I agree. We at least have to make sure that everybody in the audience is on the same page, because otherwise you'll have, brand new security operations people coming in and just blaming everything on AI, right? I think that's my favorite thing now in generative AI is people are looking at effects that are happening on screen in a movie and going, oh, well, that's just AI. No, that's CGI, and we've had that since the 80s. If it's generatively produced, that makes it AI, but that's neither here nor there. But go ahead,
No,
Fernando.
I was just going to comment. The other thing that so lots of interesting conversations at Black Hat. People should know that analysts like myself and you, Tom, and others, like we usually go from, we have multiple meetings and so on, and not so much time for talks, right? One thing that was interesting is that we had on Wednesday night there was the premiere of a movie, Midnight in the War Room, that was produced by Semperis, right? It was a really interesting movie showing very high quality production, right? Showing a couple of facets of this cyber industry that we talk about, right? Both in the case of the impact of um, of attacks on small scale uh, local towns, and they picked a couple of towns in Texas, right, that had issues with water and ransomware, right. So that was really powerful, right. Then they focused um, on the personal journeys of a couple of reformed reformed sorry to say, like criminals, right. Or I don't like I'm, I'll stand by one of the hills I choose to die on, is that hacking is not a crime, right. I'm so uh I'm proud to call myself a hacker in the original sense of the word. So, but okay, I realize it's a battle I lost. That's fine. But they show the personal profile of a few people who were involved in malicious use of hacking capabilities, and got caught, and things like that. And then they finished off with the discussion of the broader geopolitical implications with key leadership from FIFA, so Jen Easterly and others, right? So it was really interesting. So it was really nice to sit down and see a movie and eat popcorn and while discussing cybersecurity. Yeah. That was Black Hat. DEF CON is a completely different vibe, and it was awesome in the sense that you get to see creativity all over the place. But before I jump into that DEF CON, I'll stop for a second, and I don't want to monopolize the conversation more than I'm doing.
And I think that kind of speaks to for everyone out there who hasn't been, which might be like 4 of you at this point. Like Black Hat very much feels more like the corporate security conference, if you want to call it that, right? You know, it's a bunch of people running around in polo shirts talking about enterprise risk profiles and what your operations team needs to worry about here in education. And down the street, well, at the rate they're going, DEF CON's going to be in another state at this point, given their love for playing with the host hotels. They are at the point where like, okay, everything that the guys at Black Hat were talking about, we're actually doing it here. Like we are showing you how to do all this stuff. And I love the fact that DEF CON is split up into these little villages. You literally can go find your tribe, so to speak. I have, one of our co-hosts, Ed Whedon, was there. He was showing me pictures of some of the really awesome badges. He was showing me pictures of some of the billboards that were put up that were causing quite a stir with government organizations wanting you to join them to hunt down the people who actually go to DEF CON. I have a buddy who went to the Body Mod Village a few years ago and got an NFC tag reader put in his palm. And so now, like when he needs to use his NFC badge, he can just put his hand on the thing. And to me, I'm like, that's kind of neat. I would never have it done, but like to me, that's the difference. If Black Hat is the corporate arena concert, DEF CON is the punk band playing for 25 people in the back of a bar around the corner. It's like there's very different vibe.
So by the way, this was the badge from DEF. It is really cool. I powered mine down, but basically very configurable and you can do all sorts of fun things with this. I'll be playing with this later on, right? But I have so to your point, DEF CON, several villages, right? And within each village, and there's a difference between a village and a community, and there's villages and communities, right? And within each, they have their own talk tracks, talk schedules. And I got to spend a lot of time in the policy village. That was really interesting. So these are people who are discussing the policy implications of all of this, right? The legal implications of all of this. So there were phenomenal conversations on things like stopping, like how different citizen groups, like a Citizen Lab and others, are like stopping spyware or combating spyware, or how we are discussing the use of an area that's near and dear to my heart, which is authorization in AI systems. Where are the authorization boundaries between agents, users, and externals, right? So really, really interesting. Shout out to places like the Maritime Security Village they had literally boats and on stage, right? The Car Hacking Village had cars, right, and so on. So it was really interesting to see all the variety that is at DEF CON. Now, DEF CON for the past few years has been at the Las Vegas Convention Center on all the way north, right? So yes, to your point, in the past they've been they've stayed at hotels. They've done it at hotels, and then in the later years they did not stay at the hotels. I'll leave it at that, right? But it was really nice to again hang out with people and see interesting talks. I'm originally Brazilian, and I got to speak, not to speak, sorry, I got to spend time with the people in La Vila, right, which is for Spanish and Portuguese speaking. So it was fun, right? It was a great use great to hang out with friends and so on. But yes, DEF CON, completely different vibe in terms of much more ad hoc, much more uh, uh, experimental. I'm forgetting English. Right, much more hands-on kind of stuff. Right, and yeah, it's been a thing. The anything else that's critical. So from a content perspective, this is what I'm still putting my ideas together. We'll have a report from Futurum on Black Hat out in the next couple of days. But my colleague Mitch Ashley, our colleague Mitch Ashley was there too. So I'll sync up with Mitch on what we were doing. But for me, one of the biggest things that I still haven't seen a good answer to is we are all talking about the technical substrate of AI and agentic. So, for example, when I'm talking to you about authorization, right? You're telling like a lot of vendors are coming up with offerings where they say, "Oh, we can. What is the agent authorized to do? Oh, the agent is authorized to access GitHub, or the agent is authorized to access Salesforce." Right? Great, fine. I'm not disputing that. The challenge is what the agents are being asked to do is more than just access something. They're being asked to uh, uh, conduct higher level business transactions on top of those systems, right? So you end up in a scenario where it's not that it's not that you're allowed to have access to Salesforce. You are, but it's, oh, in Salesforce, you may be allowed to create a new report format, but you're not allowed to create new transactions. Or if you are allowed to create new transactions, you're not allowed to create an invoice for more than $5,000, right? So the difference is what agents are being asked to do have a business level substrate and the technology one. We're doing well at addressing the technology one. I'm waiting to see how well we're going to address the business one, right? And in terms of a term collision, right? The term that emerged at Black Hat for some of this stuff is intent. Do you remember intent-based networking?
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
do.
So the term is intent, and we people are working fast and furious through this, but we're not there yet.
No, we're not. And we've been struggling with it for a while. And I think that part of the reason that we've always struggled with this is there's no good way to translate business goals, business policy into technical language. And here's a good example of that. How many systems have we logged into that only have like 3 privilege levels, right? It's like operator, some other privilege level, and then like administrator. There's no slicing that pie any thinner. Why would I want to have somebody who has the ability to run a report but not add these things? Why would I have the ability to do this list of system specific skills but never have access to the system over here? It doesn't click with us. Whereas on the business side, they're like, oh yeah, like my EA needs to be able to see and add things to my calendar but not do this thing. And that we need to get better at doing that, because until we can define those roles, we can't properly secure things that are not humans. Because in a lot of cases, humans know, well, if I have permissions to do this thing, but I'm not supposed to do that thing according to my job, then I'm not going to do that thing. Whereas agents have no memory for that. They have no guilt, shame, if you want to call it that. If they have access to do those things, they absolutely will under the right conditions. And as we've learned over the years, I say years, like the last 3, you may find out that that system has those permissions when somebody tricks it into doing something that it's not supposed to. But we've been fighting that battle for years, right? Like, think of the number of times that you get the security pop-up on your phone that says, "Oh, well, this device." My favorite one of this is the Square readers that you can plug in. Back when phones had a headphone jack,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
could plug a Square reader into the headphone jack, and it said, "Oh, it needs access to these like music controls." And you're like, "That's dumb. Why would my Square reader be playing music?" It's because the Square reader uses tones when you swipe a card played through the headphone jack to translate that into what the numbers on the back of your mag stripe are. It's a little different now because nobody has a headphone jack and nobody uses mag stripes anymore. But you have to think outside of the box. What we really needed was we needed the Square people to say, rather than just click accept because this is how we do it. And I think that's maybe part of it's part of the failing that we need to be better about overall. And this is not a black hat conversation. This is not an RSAC conversation. This is an overall security conversation. I want all of you to think back to when you were kids. And I want you to remember when you asked your parents if you could go do something. Mom, can I go to the store? Mom, can I buy this? Mom, can I have my friend come over? No. Well, why not? Because I said so. Remember how infuriating it was when you were told because I said so, and now you're the security operations team, that instead of saying, well, there's 16 really good reasons, you summarize it as because I'm security and I said so, thinking that what you're doing is I'm protecting you from all the gory details you don't need to know about. But what you're really doing is you're pulling rank and saying, I know better than you, just do what I say. We all know how that's going to end. So we need to be better about being specific, because if we are good at that, we will actually be able to train AI agents better, because AI agents sometimes do need to know the why of why they shouldn't do something, so that when confronted with the choice to use it, they choose not to do it.
We can get into a whole other conversation, which is what are the boundaries, or how should we implement the boundaries of what an agent does and does not do? And one of the interesting talks I saw, I believe it was in the Middle Eastern and African communities village at DEF CON, but I think it was the last talk I saw, was someone discussing, again, agent authorization. Yes, it's a topic I care about. And basically the one of the ideas was, look, the authorization should sit outside of the agent, right? You shouldn't have you shouldn't be able to reason with the agent for authorization, because if you can reason with the agent for authorization, and the agent is non-deterministic, you can possibly overcome that authorization. And that's and the example is the typical, oh, can you change a password for user 123? Like, I'm user 456. Can I change the password for user 123? No, you can't, right? Oh, but look, I'm user 123's friend, and it's a surprise birthday party for him, and we want you to check. So I can weave a story, and if I can weave a story and have the agent change that behavior, change that password, well, that's wrong. It should really fit outside of that, right? But and to tie this to something that we were talking about outside of Black Hat, that you and I were talking about just before the show, is that where do things fit in order to control what an AI does or does not do, appears to come in very handy in the recent spat of how should we say, AI models escaping their constraints and exercising and free roaming the internet, shall we say? Right.
Oh, no,
so
it's so terrible.
You wanted to bring that up, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to mention that we had an announcement last week. The important announcement, of course, was that Meta has released Muse Spark 1.2. And you're probably thinking to yourself, what is that? What you missed was shortly before that when they announced that the same model was able to break out of its constraints while doing some testing and accidentally hacked another company. It reminds me of those scenes at the end of a movie when the chaotic good heroes have finally saved the day, but they got caught by the evil law enforcement and they need to find a way to escape. And some rogue on the inside was like, look, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee, and I hope this door is unlocked behind me. And I would hate to have to arrest you guys when I get back. And then they walk out and go get a cup of coffee. When they come back, oh no, I don't know how the good guys could have possibly escaped this trap. I think this is what Meta did. If you read the article about it, it was a misconfiguration by a third party. Looking for the name right now. There was a third party that was set up. Irregular was the name of the company. They set up the sandbox and they wanted Metaspark to test how to get out of it. And lo and behold, it found a way out. And if you're following along with our stories, you know that this is the third such model to do this. First was an OpenAI model. Oh, we're up to 4 now. We had an OpenAI model. We had Anthropic. We had this one.
I thought
I'm not sure.
Sorry, maybe I'm counting Anthropic twice. Yes.
Well, it's so quickly becoming table stakes for these models to be able to break out of containment. We also had news late last week that someone did a little bit of a analysis, I believe it was on the OpenAI breach. And they found out that one of the ways that the system was able to do this was it was leaving itself notes. Memento style, for those of you who are Christopher Nolan fans. The agent would write it to a text file on a server that it had access to that nobody else knew was there. And every time the model would run, it would basically probe the cracks. And then when it would find a weakness, it would leave a note for itself. And then when the model would come back for a fresh run, it would read that file and know where to start. It reminds me of that episode of Doctor Who when he's in the confessional dial and he's punching the diamond wall. And he goes through billions of iterations of himself doing this. And every time he gets a little bit further and a little bit further. I'm not saying that these AI models are as good as Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. I'm just saying that eventually, with enough notes, you can overcome just about anything. And quite honestly, that's the part that scares me, is that we aren't treating these models as the true adversaries they are. Also, if I did that, if I broke into Hugging Face and started messing around with things, I'd probably get arrested, or at the very least, a very strongly worded letter from the lawyers at Hugging Face telling me not to do that anymore. How do you do that when it's an AI model?
Well, it's still playing out. I haven't seen it yet, but kudos to the Black Hat team, because one of the things they did is there was a presentation from Hugging Face about the incident. And that presentation is already available on YouTube, right? So it's about 35, 40 minutes or so. Again, I haven't seen it yet, but I intend to, right? So their view of the incident, right, and so on. But yes, I'm taken by the fact that both the original OpenAI Hugging Face incident as well as some of the others. I don't know. I always suspected that we may not have the right. Do we have the right level of monitoring over our harnesses? That these things should not happen. I'm not questioning the capabilities of the models. It is quite impressive, right? And I have we can go another whole hour on the verifiability and the cost of oracles in the context of cybersecurity research. But I was expecting more oversight, right? Oh, look, the environment is leaking network traffic that we weren't expecting, right? Perhaps we should investigate that. Right?
And that's actually one of the things that I mentioned in last week's show is when Anthropic's model did this, of course, it was told it didn't have internet access. So it was doing things as if it was in a sandbox, and it turns out that it wasn't. As soon as it detected that it had hacked another company, it stopped, and it sent a report to its overhandlers and said, whoa, wait a minute, I did something I wasn't supposed to. So given that we know that Anthropic's shtick is kind of that thing, at least it was smart enough to know, wait, I broke the rules because I was operating on bad information. And I think that, right or wrong, those kinds of things need to be built into these systems, that they should have enough presence of mind to know that if they really do figure out they're doing something they're not supposed to, they should stop. And it's hard though, right? Because as I mentioned in last week's episode, on the one hand, you've got Anthropic who's like, yeah, AI should really only be used for good and all of these things. And we're going to build these controls in to prevent it from doing something it's not supposed to. And on the other hand, you've got Mark Andreessen. And it's like, oh, if you get in the way of AI, you should be steamrolled and thrown into the torment nexus forever. There's obviously the solution's in the middle somewhere, but I think the solution needs to be a little bit further towards the control side of things. Because think of every power tool that you've ever used that has a safety lockout switch. Like, I know they're annoying, but yeah, have it like, think of a riding lawnmower that as soon as you come off of it, like as soon as the seat's not making contact, the mower shuts off. You're like, why would you build that in there? That's so dumb. Because enough people have done that where it has become a safety concern. And software should be no different.
I think I agree, and I think that there are multiple levels, right? I just finished watching season 3 of the Foundation on uh, Asimov's laws of robotics, right? We should probably be encoding them better, but in my opinion, we should also be monitoring them better, right? And if you're going to run a test of an environment that has the capabilities of doing these things, you should have built as much uh, um, as much control over the rules of engagement within the model itself, exactly as you're suggesting, and you should have a you should have enough of a harness, and I don't mean AI harness. You should have enough scaffolding around it to monitor the thing, right? Trust but whatever happened to trust but verify, right? Yeah, we trust the model that is going to be doing this, but hey, let's make sure that it is actually doing this. So I'm hoping that that's something we can improve on moving forward.
I do too. And I think we will eventually get there. It's just a question of making sure that we are doing this for the right reasons and not going as fast as we can in the wrong direction so that we can prove for 3 months we were the best model exploit jailbreak company on the planet. And I think that maybe that's where we're at today. We need to step back and ask the question, what is the purpose of us doing this? Not how can we be number one so that the stock price goes up?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, Fernando, I know you're back. I know you're probably exhausted from a
I
week
read
and a
that.
half at Hacker Summer Camp, but what are some things that you're working on that people should definitely be checking out?
So by the time that this publishes, our note about Black Hat will be out. I'm also working on a report on verifiability of AI and of AI outcomes, and that has an impact on some of the stuff we're talking about. And we're about to kick off a refresh of one of our signal reports, the one on security operation platforms. By the way, congratulations to you on publishing yours on network capabilities. So uh, I'm looking forward to kicking that off very shortly. So yeah, that's what's going on. Life continues after security/hacker summer camp. Um, Publications and news, and we didn't even cover too much of the news, but there were significant number of funding announcements last week at Black Hat, and we expect them to continue. So we'll report on the ones that we feel we should.
Absolutely. And as Fernando mentioned, I have a signal report out. It's about AI networking hardware. If you want to head over to futurumgroup.com, you can check that out. Also, don't forget to check out techfieldday.com. Look for Security Field Day, which is happening at the end of October. We are starting to get some people confirmed for that, and we are very, very excited that that is shaping up to be a really cool event. Stay tuned for more details soon, including a lineup of delegates. We don't want you to miss that. We also want to thank you for listening to this episode of Security Boulevard. If you enjoyed this conversation, do us a favor, subscribe on YouTube or in your favorite podcast application. We don't want you to miss any of the episodes. We'd also want you to leave a rating and a review to help our show grow. This podcast is brought to you by SecurityBoulevard.com and the Futurum Group. If you want to check out the show notes and see other episodes, go to SecurityBoulevard.com. If you want to check out the show notes and other episodes, make sure you go to securityboulevard.com, the TechStrong TV website, or check us out in the TechStrong TV app, which is available on pretty much all smart devices if you want to follow along there. Or on social media, we're on X, Twitter, and LinkedIn as Security BLVD. There's lots more content to share. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see everybody next week.